It seems like everywhere I look, people are complaining about therapy speak.
Do you ever want to say how you really feel without consequences? Do you have no intention to ever work on yourself but want to seem evolved? Do you want to get away with literally anything you want? Then you might need to learn therapy speak. With therapy speak, you can bail on things last minute.
Hey, I can't come to your birthday tonight. I need to honor my personal boundaries and conserve my emotional bandwidth. I'm at capacity right now.
Oh my god, of course. Protect your peace, girl. Avoid being there for your friend. You need to lean into the discomfort, practice radical acceptance, and learn how to self-soothe. True, you're literally so wise. And break up with people with no explanation. I'm not in a space to authentically show up, so I'm practicing compassionate detachment. Yo, that's so valid. If I ever go to therapy one day, I'll probably understand then. But therapy speak. Do whatever you want and still sound like the better person.
It was so fun tonight. I'll see you this weekend at my housewarming, right?
That's what I was.
To be radically honest, upon further reflection, it has come to my attention that I'm no longer able to spend time with your friend group because I find them to be insufferable and, quite frankly, toxic. In order for us to spend more time together, it's going to have to be one-on-one outside of them.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did someone say something?
No, it's just their vibes. It's just their vibes.
I don't care how much like TikTok therapy speech you have internalized, you do owe people things, especially if you're in relationships with them. Like if you're friends with someone, you do owe them a text back. You do owe them hanging out. You do owe them like honesty and empathy.
I see estranged parents complaining about how their kids are saying they're setting boundaries or protecting their peace. We've got people egregiously misusing and misunderstanding terms like gaslighting. Celebrities saying they're holding space, whatever that means.
This week, people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that.
People brutally trying to cancel each other under the guise of accountability. People watering down the word trauma to mean even like everyday small inconveniences. People saying they're triggered anytime they simply feel uncomfortable with something. And of course, people calling each other toxic and narcissists at every chance they get. I feel ambivalent saying this because as a doctor of psychology, my entire education has focused around how to correctly use these terms, and my entire channel is focused on educating other people how to correctly use these terms. And while I still think it's really, really important to understand these terms and for professionals to use them, I've been warning y'all for years at this point that a loud minority was going to run therapy speak into the ground, and I think that time has finally come. I think it's finally time for lay people to stop using therapy speak in everyday life to each other. People are just really fed up with the way therapy speak is misused by people. And if you actually want to be effective in your communication with people in your life, therapy speak is not usually the way to go about it. I'm literally begging you to please find different words to communicate what it is you're trying to say. And I'm going to give you some help with that. Today, I'm going to try to offer some alternative ways of communicating that better get your point across and better meet your goals in interpersonal situations that don't involve misusing therapy speak. Let's get started. Okay, the first thing you need to understand is that if you're actually dealing with someone who has narcissistic personality disorder or someone who is, quote, toxic, which to me, the way I define toxic is someone whose presence causes you serious harm, who in large quantities is sort of like emotional poison to you. If you're dealing with someone like that, calling them out is like the last thing you should do. This is emotional survival 101. And by the way, not everyone who is toxic is a narcissist. Narcissism refers to a very specific cluster of traits. A lot of the people that you guys are calling narcissists are people who have different personality styles, but tend to be high conflict usually, tend to be low in self-awareness. Those things can encompass a lot of different personality structures. It doesn't always have to be narcissism. And also, not everyone who's a narcissist is an abuser, and not everyone who's an abuser is a narcissist. So please also stop using the term narcissist to refer to just an abuser. Because again, abusers come in all different shapes and sizes personality-wise. But putting all of that aside, let's assume that you're actually dealing with a narcissist. If you call someone a narcissist who is actually a narcissist, they're going to likely feel immense shame, project, and flip it onto you and say you're the narcissist and go on a smear campaign against you to frame you as a narcissist. Guarantee that is how they're going to react. Or if you're just, trying to call out somebody toxic, you're telling this person you're codependent with your husband. You enable him because you don't let him experience the natural consequences of his behavior. And you're triangulating his relationship with his kids because you're forcing them to also engage with them after they've set clear boundaries with him. Whoa, so much therapy speak in there, right? Like, I know exactly what that means. If you're a frequent viewer of this channel, you probably know exactly what that means. But that's not going to be received well to actually say to someone. People don't enjoy being psychoanalyzed, and even in therapy, the therapist would never just say something like that bluntly to a person. They would try to carefully, experientially get that person to realize some of these things on their own. It takes time. It's not something you would just completely throw on a person. That wouldn't be productive. Plus, you're not only psychoanalyzing that person, but you're also pathologizing them using terms from clinical abnormal psychology, which is again going to make that person feel shame, make them shut down, and escalate conflict rather than resolving it, which I would hope in a situation like that, your goal is to decrease conflict, not to make things worse. Now, in the moment when you're getting this brief hit of inspiration, it's I'm going to psychoanalyze this person, I'm going to tell them exactly what's wrong, and I'm going to use all this therapy speak, you think that it's going to be such a relief. You think it's going to be so satisfying that the other person is finally going to understand that you see them, you have them figured out, and maybe they'll also understand that what they did was wrong. That is never going to happen. People who genuinely behave in toxic ways are not typically capable of self-reflection. Calling them out only makes things worse. The only things you can do is set boundaries, enforce consequences when they inevitably break those boundaries. Don't explain, defend, or justify yourself. Gray rock. So using the same example as before, you're talking to someone who you say is codependent with her husband. She's, shielding him from the consequences of his own actions, and she's forcing his kids to talk to him. Saying that, not going to help. What's going to help is instead not giving in when she tries to guilt you. Saying, listen, Ellen, I understand, you want me to buy 200 boxes of Herbalife from your husband or whatever because he went into debt getting it, but I'm not able to do that. And when she inevitably asks again and again, then just pulling back, disengaging. You don't have to provide an explanation saying, oh, this past month my income wasn't so good, that's why I can't buy the Herbalife this month. You don't have to say, hey, it's fucked up that you're triangulating right now. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to use therapy speak. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to psychoanalyze or pathologize or any of it. Again, all you can do, set boundaries, enforce the consequence of your boundaries, which is usually just to disengage because you can't actually control the other person. Don't explain yourself. Gray rock. Be plain, be uninteresting. Don't give that person anything they can latch onto. It is not satisfying. It's not satisfying at all, but trust me, the other person usually gets their karma. It just won't look the way you think it does. I don't know if I've told this anecdote before, but growing up, there was somebody who was just consistently so mean to me. And I was just wondering, when is there going to be justice? When is this person going to finally realize how horrible she's being and receive some consequences for her behavior? And then it occurred to me, she already is. She already is living through her own personal hell. Every day in which she acts the way she acts, in which she projects her distress onto other people, she is already miserable. There will never come a day when she has self-awareness and realizes, oh, I'm miserable because of the things that I do to other people. She's already living her punishment. So, this fantasy that we often have of I'm going to confront this person, I'm going to make them confront their own behavior, I'm going to make them figure out what's wrong with them, that's never going to happen. You're never going to get that satisfying moment of relief. Chances are that person is already experiencing their punishment every day of their life. So it's very important that you understand terms like boundaries or gaslighting or enabling, that you're, well versed in abuse dynamics in order to sort of insulate yourself from abusers. But you must never actually use those terms with that person, or else they will know that you see right through them and they will unleash a wrath on you like no other. If you've ever done this, I'm sure some of you have done this, please let me know in the comments how that went for you, because I want other people to also see that this is what happens when you use therapy speak to confront someone on the way that they are. So we have a whole group of people using therapy speak when dealing with high conflict people, and that is not helping, because then those high conflict people are just going to latch on those keywords as anyone who uses this word is someone who can't be trusted, who is immediately must be dismissed, must be invalidated. You know, like so many people have said to like toxic family members, I'm setting a boundary with you, instead of actually setting the boundary with them, that a lot of people now say, you know, anyone who uses the word boundary is just, you know, been brainwashed by the internet. This young generation, they're just so disrespectful, yada, yada, yada. Don't actually use the term with them. Put it into practice. You know, you don't have to say, I'm setting a boundary with you. Set the boundary instead. But even worse, we now have a whole group of people who are actually weaponizing therapy speak as a form of reverse victimization. People who are actually high conflict, volatile, harmful people who accuse others of being a narcissist. People who use the term gaslighting to mean you just have a different perspective from me. People who say they want justice when what they really want is revenge. People who think boundaries get to control what the people in their life do. Bullies who claim they want accountability, but really what they want is to get their pitchforks out over someone making a minor human mistake, even after maybe apologizing for it.
Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? Okay, I'm going to stop you there because what you're doing right now is trauma dumping by answering that question negatively. And I do not have the capacity to hold space for your trauma at this moment. So I'm going to set a boundary with this conversation so that only I can answer that question because I had a really good day. No, I mean, I'm fine. I just you said that your food was really, really good. And then you offered me a bite of it and I took a bite of it and I didn't think it was that good. So I'm just feeling really gaslit right now. Like the fact that you were prioritizing your taste buds over my potential taste buds is very narcissistic. And I think that you should speak to somebody about it. Actually, by you telling me that I hurt your feelings, you were criticizing me and I was heavily criticized as a child. So that is triggering to me. So I'm going to need you to dial it back in because when I am mean to you, it actually heals my inner child. And I need you to hold space for that. Otherwise, I will have to go no contact.
Stop. Because that's like so triggering for me. I understand that your grandma died, but like that is so triggering for me. My grandma's still alive, but like I'm afraid of her not being. Therapist says I shouldn't be around people who don't respect my boundaries and my triggers. That's my boundary. I feel like you're really twisting my words and like kind of manipulating me, and I feel very gaslit right now. You're really like you're gaslighting me. Don't see why you wouldn't be able to rebuild the transmission in my car. Because you're my boyfriend and I feel like you're really weaponizing your incompetence at me right now. Well, you're really disrespecting my boundaries by saying that you can't rebuild the transmission on my car. It doesn't matter if it's something that you don't know how to do, you're weaponizing your incompetence. I learned this in therapy. Setting boundaries. I really can't handle you trauma dumping on me right now. Okay, like I had to hear about your flat tire on the way to work. Like that's such a trauma dump on me when I have my own inner child that needs healing. Those are my boundaries. I just feel like it was really like narcissistic abuse when you decided that you were gonna pick where we were going for dinner. Okay, but like why did you have to pick, like why does this always have to be about you? Like it's definitely giving narcissism. Well, if I asked you to pick, like I just think now you're really gaslighting me. It's extreme gaslighting. You chose a place that we've never been to before and you really were not considering my inner child in that. Boundary is that you don't get to tell me how you feel. That's my boundary. Setting boundaries.
Okay, I'm getting heated just thinking about this. Let's take a little bit of a break for a positive visualization exercise. Let me paint you a picture. It's Saturday morning. Outside it's raining or snowing, so you make yourself a cup of hot chocolate, you sit down on the couch under the blanket, and you pop open your laptop to stream something. But you're not just binge watching TV. This time you want to watch something that's both high quality and powerful, something that will help you achieve your dreams. This has actually been what some of my Saturdays have looked like. It's some of my favorite time in the world, which is why I'm super excited to announce today's sponsor, Masterclass, a brand that I've actually been using for years. Masterclass is a platform of over 200 courses and thousands of lessons in a variety of fields: writing, business, science and tech, health and wellness, cooking, and so on. It's a membership-based streaming service billed at $10 per month, billed annually, and they're currently doing a promotion of up to 50% off. This is not just a regular collection of courses. In my opinion, it is the top of the top, created by the biggest titans in their field. The ones that I most often consume are from authors like Margaret Atwood, Dan Brown, since I'm always looking to hone my craft as an author, and the lessons I learned in their classes are things that have stuck with me for years. readers. For example, Dan Brown gives the advice of, if you want to increase tension in your novel, basically cut the timeline in half. If you say, I want this novel to take place over the course of 3 weeks, do a week and a half instead. Or I've spoken before about his advice on sticking to your promises. When you introduce something to the readers, making sure that you actually follow through on it. I also love how professional and evocative the production quality is. The theme usually matches the topic. So a dark, brooding library background for a thriller author like Dan Brown. Masterclass truly contains a world of knowledge that will make you so much more powerful in whatever field you're looking to hone yourself in. New classes are added to the library every month. For example, I've been meaning to watch Martha Stewart's class on Think Like a Boss, Live Like a Legend, or Ryan Holiday's video on Stoicism. They also have more fun classes like mixology or Italian cooking. You can stream anywhere, anytime at your pace, so that instead of mindlessly consuming content, you're using technology to actually unlock the best kept secrets from experts in their field. This holiday season, you can get up to 50% off on your annual masterclass subscription. Just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code on screen so that they know I sent you. Learn from the world's best to become your best with Masterclass. Back to therapy speak. How do we deal with people who weaponize therapy speak? Obviously, we could tell people who weaponize therapy speak to stop weaponizing therapy speak, but that's not going to work. They're not going to listen. They like the power that these clinical sounding terms gives them in relationships. So instead, why don't we focus on how to respond when someone is using therapy speak for power? Obviously, you could just tell them to kick rocks. If they use therapy speak against you, you could just set a boundary and disengage. But you could also get them to push past the label and try to actually describe what it is that they're talking about. When someone sticks to labels and avoids specificity, it can sometimes be a sign that they're not being completely honest. Somebody who's malingering, who's, for instance, pretending to experience some sort of issue for secondary gain, let's say they're trying to get money out of someone. They might say, I developed anxiety, I developed depression as a result of what this person said to me. If I were to hear that, I would go, that's interesting. They didn't talk about what that actually looks like for them. They didn't talk about, I had my heart racing, I woke up sometimes with a feeling of dread, I felt helpless to change my circumstances. No, they were just describing the label. They weren't actually applying it specifically to their lived experience. Someone who's weaponizing a clinical term doesn't actually understand what the term means. They're using the term for secondary gain. So let's do an example. Let's say somebody's saying you're gaslighting me when you disagree with them about a piece of news, for instance. You could say, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that? And they reply, well, you're saying that my reality isn't real. Well, then you reply, oh no, I'm so sorry, we're misunderstanding each other. I'm not trying to say your reality isn't real. What I'm saying is my perspective is different. The way I see it, everyone has different perspectives. And gaslighting is when somebody tries to make another person doubt their sense of reality. Surely you're not saying that me having a different opinion is trying to make you doubt your sanity, is it? It takes the power out of the term. It points out that they're not using it correctly. They probably don't even know what it means. Just play dumb, be non-defensive and play dumb. Be I'm sorry, I thought this term meant that. Does it actually mean that we have a difference of opinion? Or here's another example. Let's say somebody's saying you can't go to brunch with the girls because that's their boundary for people that they date. People they date can't go to brunch with the girls. You could say, your boundary, okay, what does that mean to you? Well, it means, things I'm not willing to tolerate from a partner. Right. I guess I'm confused because I thought boundaries were for you, not for other people. Yeah, that's right. It is for me. But if you're telling me what I can do, how is that a boundary for you? Because otherwise there will be a consequence. Right. And that consequence is what? That I'm going to be upset. And that's totally within your right. You have a right to feel however you feel, just like I have a right to go to brunch with the girls, just like you have a right to stop dating me if that's a deal breaker for you. Essentially what you'd be saying in that interaction is you're misusing the term boundary. I'm not responsible for your emotions. And if this were an actual boundary for you, then the only thing you can do is break up with me if this is such a deal breaker. But you can't tell me what I can and can't do and hold your emotions over my head. The key is to actually understand what these terms mean. Play dumb and call out their misuse. This is why it's still key to understand these terms. You guys, this is why I educate you on different clinical terms, because it's empowering. Doing so will protect you from people who use these terms to harm you. And also another way that I think therapy speak has gone too far is self-diagnosis and people's need to self-pathologize everything about them. Somebody being tidy means they are OCD. Someone being in the zone when they're enjoying a topic is hyperfixation caused by neurodivergence. Someone getting overwhelmed is them having a sensitivity to overstimulation. Everything is autism, everything is ADHD, everything is anxiety. If everything is pathological, then nothing is pathological. If everyone has a mental health diagnosis, then it shouldn't really be a diagnosis because it's not abnormal, it's the norm within that culture, right? Like if everyone within a culture experiences anxiety, for instance, to a very distressing degree, then that's not outside the norm. That's not like at the tip of the bell curve. That's not something that just a small proportion of people experience. That is just probably the environment being sick. It's nothing to do with that person being on the fringes of whatever experience it is. And listen, there's nothing wrong with being on the fringes of that experience. Something being pathological doesn't mean it should be stigmatized, right? Like just because a minority of people actually meet criteria for autism spectrum disorder, for instance, doesn't mean that that is something that should be shamed. But like in therapy, we don't really use therapy speak with clients. We don't really use clinical terms with them because it's not productive. It's not how progress is made. Instead, we focus on concrete ways that clinical issues impact their specific life. Maybe sometimes a therapist would provide psychoeducation if it's empowering. Like, if diagnosing someone with a disorder and be like, hey, listen, like I'm about to diagnose you with this. I think we should talk about it. But it's usually much more powerful to, for instance, get a client to trust their therapist through small everyday moments rather than simply telling a client they have a disorganized attachment style. At the end of the day, you are more than a label or a cluster of symptoms. And whatever label you do or don't have, it doesn't change the reality of your experiences. You are you. You have the experiences you have regardless of the name that you attach to it. And listen, I know that there are also benefits to identifying with a label. I've talked about them on this channel before. I'm not going to list them right now because I'm frankly tired of needing to say disclaimers for every single point I make. We're just not going to do that today, okay? It's strange that, millennials fought so hard to let go of the need for rigid labels, only for Gen Z to then go and want so badly to label themselves. Like, yeah, sometimes you do meet criteria for a label, but so often once we start identifying with something, then we don't want to let go of it. So even if it's something painful, like say, experiencing anxiety to a distressing degree, you don't want to say like, I have anxiety. You're going to be incentivized to stick with that label. It's a part of you as you see it. You're not then going to want to say, I'm a person who used to have anxiety. You're going to want to stay in that spot. But listen, like I know like a lot of people are going to get mad at this, but I'm sorry, like I don't believe in self-diagnosing. I really don't. I think it's really risky. I think people often do it erroneously because it's not just about understanding that specific label. You could, for instance, understand what autism looks like very well, but you don't understand the hundreds of other mental health diagnoses that could look like autism. You can't rule those out because you didn't go to school for this. You don't have all of the background that somebody who is trained to actually use these words knows how to use. So in conclusion, I just think like we need to understand clinical terms for sure, but the time has come to maybe stop using them in everyday interactions with other people. Definitely not productive to call people out using therapy speak because it's only going to stigmatize the field of mental health and it's only going to make things much worse for you. There are much better, less satisfying ways to respond to someone. Also, again, people who genuinely want to weaponize these terms do a good job of doing it, although, they have a very superficial understanding of these terms because obviously genuinely understanding them does require a level of self-reflection. And also we're seeing people over-identifying with clinical terms to the point where I think it ceased to be productive. Educate yourself on what these terms mean. Understand the true meaning of them, not just the pop psychology meaning of them. And please consider finding a different way to get your point across than using them in day-to-day life. Because at the end of the day, these terms weren't built for lay people to use them. They were built for professionals to use them and for other people to hopefully understand them. Don't forget to check out Masterclass's holiday sale. That is an incredible opportunity. It is such a fun way to spend your time and so empowering. All right, I will see you in the next one. Take care.